Good afternoon, everybody. This is Holloway with the National Weather Service with Alaska's Tight Wet Weather. Thanks for joining on this November 10th, 2020. We have a couple options for you to help you further refine your weather search, a 1-800 number, and a webpage, weather.gov/Alaska. This will also allow you to further look into our watch warnings and advisories that are currently out. If you have any questions about the broadcast and any comments in general, please email us listed at the bottom of the page there. Hazardous weather. We have high surf advisories out until this evening for much of the Kotzebue Sound and Norton Sound region. The winter storm warnings out for the Noatak and Kobuk River valleys, as well as the upper Koyukuk, will be ending this afternoon. And that advisories out for much of the northeast part of the state will be ending this evening around 6 p.m. And lastly, a couple more advisories out for Bristol Bay for high surf will be in existence beginning this evening and lasting until tomorrow afternoon. And lastly, the winter weather advisory out for portions of the northern panhandle will be issued and in effect from 6 p.m. Wednesday until 6 a.m. Thursday. Taking a look at the satellite image, looks like a couple low pressure systems pulling through the Aleutians and into the Bristol Bay region, with rain out through much of the Aleutians and through the Alaska Peninsula and into Bristol Bay. As you move further inland, most likely snow showers across much of the Alaska Range and portions of the uplands, but just light snowfall right now. And there might be even a little bit of rain activity across the Gulf region with a weak trough in that area. What does this look like on the surface map? 976 millibar low with rain showers again, like we talked about on the satellite image, through the Aleutians and in Alaska Peninsula. Occluded front turning into trouble point as you get closer to the Alaska Peninsula. Moderate to heavy rain out across the Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay region. Lighter rain as you get into the YK Delta and Norton Sound region. Mixed precipitation through the Bristol Bay region, and snow showers as you move in further into the inland areas and across the western Brooks Range. And there's that weak trough that I talked about in the satellite image, bringing some light rain possible in the northern Gulf. For tonight's weather, that low moves closer to Bristol Bay at 969 millibar low now, with again light rain showers associated with that, and troughs pinwheeling out from that low pressure system. Otherwise, we do analyze a low pressure system in the Gulf region with an occluder front. That heavy rain is moving into Prince William Sound, moderate rain through the Gulf region, maybe some light rain showing up in the Panhandle, Northeast Gulf Coast. Otherwise, rain showers through the mountainous areas of the Wrangell, St. Elias, and into the Chugach Range, Kenai Mountains, and Alaska Range as well. And that spreads out through much of the western interior. For Wednesday's weather, looking at a 973 millibar low now, as that low continues to progress eastward. Trough so out ahead of that system, that weakening occluded front now pushing through the Panhandle. Moderate rain through the Gulf region, snow showers through the coastal mountains and much of the Panhandle and into the northern Gulf and even into the Alaska Range, and continued snow showers out across the lower Kobuk, Noatak valleys and western Brooks Range. Mixed precipitation out through much of the Bering and rain showers through the Aleutians. Thursday, that low finally makes it into the gold 980 millibar low. Trough associated with that low spreading into the Aleutians, with rain at the lower elevations, snow in the higher country, and that snow continues through the northern Gulf and Chugach, Kenai Mountains, and portions of the Alaska Range, and snow showers through much of the southwest. Moving into temperatures for Wednesday morning, we're looking at Kaktovik being around 0, Dead Horse 4, Ukqiavik 11, Point Hope 29, -5 at Arctic Village, and 9 at AKwx Pass. Fort Yukon 7, Eagle 8, Northway 1, Fairbanks 20, 30s through much of the southwest and middle and lower Yukon. Nome 34, 36 in Dillingham, 35 in King Salmon, 30s and low 40s through much of the Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians, with 39 in St. Paul, 37 in Kodiak, and 30s and maybe even a 22 there at Juneau, 25 in Haines, 30 in Ketchikan. As we move into Wednesday afternoon, 11 now in Kaktovik, 13 in Dead Horse, 20 Ukqiavik, 34 in Fort Yukon, AKwx Pass. Looking at 20, Arctic Village is 12, 18 Fort Yukon, 17 in Eagle, 12 in Northway, 28 in Fairbanks, 30 in Big Delta, 35 in McKinley Park area, and Nome 38, 30s down through much of the southwest, 40s showing up there in the Alaska Peninsula and down through the Aleutians, with Shemya 41, 38 in Sabunga, 46 in Kodiak. And Thursday morning, single digits and teens through the interior, with 30s through southwest and Aleutian.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the flying weather for Wednesday morning, around a weakening low in the Gulf. IFR conditions will be noted in Prince William Sound and southern end of the Alaska Range. Otherwise, marginal conditions throughout much of the western mainland and into the Brooks Range. And again, another low pressure system coming into Bristol Bay, relatively strong, with IFR conditions in portions of the eastern Bering and up through the Norton Sound and Seward Peninsula. For Wednesday morning, as that low comes into Bristol Bay, IFR conditions associated with that system, and we will be noting a trough spreading out through into the Gulf region. Otherwise, weakening includer front near the Panhandle will produce some IFR conditions approaching the Panhandle. Otherwise, marginal conditions there. And that IFR conditions spreads into Prince William Sound. Marginal conditions also noted across much of the western mainland. For Thursday morning, that weakening low is now in the northern Gulf, with IFR conditions associated with that system, especially noted across the north coast and into the Panhandle. Otherwise, weakening low in the Norton Sound area, bringing IFR conditions across Norton Sound and into the Seward Peninsula and southwest region and into the YK Delta. Flying weather for Thursday afternoon, marginal conditions noted throughout much of the Brooks Range and portions of the North Slope. Otherwise, again, a continued low pressure system in the Norton Sound region will bring IFR conditions there, and again, weakening low in the Gulf brings IFR conditions spread from the Panhandle into the Prince William Sound. Marginal conditions spread out through much of the Alaska Peninsula and into the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Forecast conditions on Wednesday, marginal for Adigan and AKwx. Otherwise, IFR conditions for Lake Clark and Merrill. And rainy pass, IFR conditions turning to marginal. Windy, marginal. And Isabel, marginal. I did think that Mentasta will be on the edge of those marginal conditions, so VFR conditions for Mentasta. Tanita, marginal. And then for Portage, went for IFR conditions, especially on the eastern entrance, but otherwise you might see some VFR conditions as you pop into the Cook Inlet region. For Chilkoot and White, VFR, but turning to marginal conditions during the day. And for freezing levels, Wednesday morning, surface freezing level cuts across the Panhandle and into the Anchorage Bowl and up through the western interior. Otherwise, 2,000 foot freezing level cuts across the Panhandle, southern end of the Panhandle, and across the northern Gulf and down through Alaska Peninsula and south side of the Aleutians. For icy conditions on Wednesday, I went for around 10,000 feet and above across the Alaska Range and into portions of the northern interior and Seward Peninsula, otherwise between 5 and 10,000 feet across the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, and down through the Alaska Peninsula. I did note that considerable moderate conditions would be noted in the Bristol Bay region. Forward jet stream on Wednesday, 165 knots, cutting across in a northwesterly flow in the Gulf, otherwise 85 knots in Prince William Sound in a southerly direction around a low pressure system, otherwise across the North Slopes 60 to 70 knots from a westerly direction up that way. 9,000 foot winds around a low pressure system in Bristol Bay and Norton Sound region, southerly winds across northern Gulf, and 35 knots across much of the Panhandle, and light and variable across the North Slope, but otherwise 75 knots cutting across the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula, and otherwise northwesterly winds predominant through the Bering Sea region. 3,000 foot winds on Wednesday. Continued low pressure system as you get down to 3,000 feet in Bristol Bay, Norton Sound region, 60 knots cutting across Prince William Sound, northern Gulf, otherwise southwesterly winds coming into the Panhandle, and again 75 knots cutting across the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula. For turbulence on Wednesday, went for between below 5,000 feet in Prince William Sound, below 3,000 feet in Panhandle, and below 4,000 feet with isolated severe across portions of the...
Here at the end of the Earth, it still feels like a place for raw exploration and adventure. It's vast in all directions and ground zero for some of the biggest questions we have about the climate. But when we decided to make a series about the frozen places on Earth, we knew there would be one hurdle we would need to jump over first. What is the cryosphere?
The what?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
While I'm aware of the cryosphere, I don't actually know what it is.
It has something to do with ice. All right, that's all I got.
How do you get people acquainted with the cryosphere when most of us don't even know what it is?
Hey, so here we are in Washington, D.C., standing on the roof of NASA headquarters. That's the Capitol building right behind me. And what headquarters does is kind of serve as the focal point to connect the dots.
That's Dr. Tom Wagner, NASA's cryospheric program scientist at headquarters. In short, Tom is responsible for making sure NASA knows what the current status of the cryosphere is.
The cryosphere is everything from the snow that falls by your house to the icy reaches of the Himalayas, to the big ice sheets of Antarctica all the way at the South Pole, and also the frozen ground of the Arctic, and even some of that frozen ground that's currently under the ocean.
If you had to break it down, you'd have a mix of sea ice, snow cover, permafrost, ice sheets, and glaciers.
Right now, our best predictions are that sea levels will rise anywhere from 1 to 3 feet within the next 100 years. 3 feet of sea level rise has the potential to displace about 100 million people, which is a lot of people that need to find new homes.
Our current reality places us at a near tipping point, and the cryosphere is playing a huge part in that delicate balance.
So one of the things people don't know about NASA is that we study the Earth, and we've been doing that since NASA's inception back in the 1950s. And we study the frozen part of the Earth in a variety of ways.
Missions like SNOWX, Airborne Snow Observatory, Oceans Melting Greenland, Operation Icebridge, Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, and countless other labs and individual researchers stand at the forefront of monitoring the cryosphere. But this year was a particularly big year.
3
2, 1, and liftoff of Grace Follow-On, continuing the legacy of the Grace mission of tracking the movement of water across our planet.
2 state-of-the-art satellite missions are being launched in a single year as part of a major attempt to understand Earth's frozen places. Our scientists are answering hard questions, sharing stories from the field, and giving their best predictions for what we can expect of a warming world. We're taking you with us as we follow NASA explorers on their journey to the frozen ends of the Earth as they study our rapidly changing world from satellites, planes, and boots on the ground.
What we can do really well from orbit is we can tell when a surface of land is covered in snow. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
What we think of snow depends a lot on where it falls. If you live in the eastern US, maybe it's fun. Or maybe it's just a pain.
But if you live in parts of the world where they depend on the water that's in the snow for a large fraction of their total water that they use for drinking, for agriculture, for industry, or for hydropower, the snow is a very important natural resource. For example, in the western part of the United States, 80 to 90% of their renewable water comes from snow.
Snow is one part of the cryosphere that many of us have actually encountered before, but it also plays a critical role in regulating the Earth's climate. Through decades of remote sensing, NASA has kept a close eye on the ebb and flow of snow cover.
We now have a 52-year record of snow cover in the Northern Hemisphere, and we can see changes in the extent of snow cover over the time period, particularly in the last few decades, where we can see that the snow cover has been retreating. It's been melting a lot earlier in the springtime.
The extent is relatively easy to do, and it has been done over the years. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
That tricky part is known as the snow-water equivalent, or how much water would actually be in a layer of snow if it melted. NASA and its partners have taken to the air to help solve this elusive mystery. First, there's the Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO, a small plane outfitted with a couple of instruments, one of which measures snow depth using LiDAR. LiDAR measures distance using light from lasers. Since 2014, ASO has flown over basins in California and Colorado, taking before and after looks at snow depth. Scientists subtract the snow-free summer data from the snow-on winter data to get an idea of the snow depth. There's no single way to measure all types of snow across the globe, and so NASA's other airborne campaign, SnowX, is testing different combinations of sensors. This winter, SnowX will test a new instrument, the Snow-Water Equivalent Synthetic Aperture Radar and Radiometer, or SWISAR.
SWISAR consists of 2 main components, one of them being the radar and the second one being the radiometer.
So with the radar providing the depth of the snow and the radiometer providing the density of the snow, we could put those 2 things together and get the snow-water equivalent. Here in the chamber, we're going to measure different radiation patterns at our different frequencies and do some full system testing in this chamber. This chamber kind of enables us to isolate various types of radiation and interference. And in about a month, we're going to take the instrument, mount it on a Twin Otter in the Grand Mesa in Colorado, and we're going to fly it over the Grand Mesa and take various different measurements. This is what we call our engineering flight.
Making sure the sensors are calibrated is key in order to face the challenges nature will throw at them.
Half of the area that gets covered by snow every winter contains trees and forest. And the trees make it difficult for the sensors to see the snow that's underneath the trees, so it makes it difficult for us to measure how much snow there is. After the snow's had a chance to sit on the ground for a while, it gets denser and denser and denser over time, and it changes, which is another reason why snow is very challenging to remotely sense. It doesn't stay the same. It's constantly changing. One of the things that we often do in the field is go dig what we call a snow pit. We literally dig a pit in the snow so we can see all the different layers. The layering is very important.
All this digging is part of ground truthing SnowX, a way of matching up what the airborne instruments see and what is actually sitting on the surface. The ultimate goal of SnowX is to figure out what the best combination of instruments would be for a future satellite mission in order to get a global picture of snow.
We need to know how much snow is in a snowpack, because if we have too much snow and the snow melts too fast, then you can get flooding. And if you don't have enough snow, or if the snow melts too early, that can lead to a longer wildfire season, a more intense drought, and we need to know these things for water resource planning.
After we had a record that was about 15, 20 years long, we started noticing that the extent of the ice in the Arctic was getting smaller over time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the marine forecast, starting with the ice edge, we do have some higher concentrations of ice showing up there in the northwest coast. Also, some concentrations of ice showing up in Kotzebue Sound, Norton Sound, Kuskokwim Bay, and even the Cook Inlet region, as well as a little bit of ice showing up in Bristol Bay. The other good news is ice is showing up in the Chukchi Sea, closing in there. Winds of the marine forecast for southeast inside waters, winds generally from the southerly direction 10 to 25, seas as high as 4 feet. Outside winter waters, winds generally from the south at 30, seas as high as 13 feet. For southeast on Thursday, inside waters, winds generally from the southeast at 10 to 30 with seas as high as 10 feet over the Clarence Strait region. Otherwise, outside waters, winds generally from the variable direction at 15 to 20, seas as high as 20 feet. And for south central on Wednesday, Prince William Sound, winds generally from the east at 35, seas as 9 feet. In the Gulf region, winds variable direction 25 to 45, seas as high as 16 feet. And Cook Inlet region, winds generally from the east at 25 or 15 to 25, seas as high as 5 feet in the Kamishak Bay region. For Thursday, south central winds Prince William Sound, winds generally from the east at 20, seas as high as 4 feet. Gulf region, winds generally from a variable direction 20 to 35, seas as high as 16 feet there. And for Cook Inlet region, winds generally from a westerly direction 15 to 35 with seas as high as 9 feet in the Kamishak Bay region. For Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, looking at some storm force winds across the region. Otherwise, around Kodiak Island, winds variable 30 to 50 with seas as high as 25 feet. South side of the peninsula, winds generally from a westerly direction 50 miles per hour there. Seas as high as 28 feet. North side of the peninsula, winds generally from a westerly direction 55 with seas as high as 32 feet. And into Bristol Bay region, winds generally from the west at 45, seas as high as 18 feet. Winds really come down on Thursday. Winds around Kodiak Island and much of the region from a westerly direction, seas as high as 22 feet just south and southeast of Kodiak Island. Otherwise, north side of the peninsula, winds generally from the west at 35, seas as high as 19 feet. And south side of the peninsula, winds generally from the west at 30 to 40 with seas as high as 20 feet. For Aleutian Chain, again looking at some storm force winds, especially of the eastern Aleutians, but otherwise across the region, winds generally from the west at 25 to 50 with seas as high as 30 feet there just north of Unalaska. Loosen chain on Thursday. Winds continuing out of the west, 20 to 30, with seas as high as 13 feet, just north of Unalaska and between Shemya and Kiska. For West Coast, again in the St. Paul, St. George region, probably looking at some storm force winds there. Otherwise, winds across the region 20 to 50, with seas as high as 26 feet there around St. Paul and St. George. Otherwise, in the Norton Sound region, winds generally from the southeast with 20 seas as high as 4 feet. For West Coast, Thursday, winds continue out of the west at 10 to 30, with seas as high as around 13 feet. St. Paul, St. George area. Otherwise, Norton Sound, looking at winds generally from the northeast at 10, seas as high as 2 feet. For the Arctic coast, the Arctic Ocean region there, winds generally from the east at 20 to 25, seas as high as 6 feet in the ice-free area. Otherwise, northwest coast, looking at 25 to 30, seas as high as 8 feet, and down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from a variable direction at 25, seas as high as 10 feet. And for Thursday, looking at winds generally from a northeasterly direction across the Arctic coast there at 20 to 25, northwest coast 30, with seas as high as 13 feet, and down through the Bering Strait, winds variable direction 20 to 30, seas as high as 12 feet. For tonight's weather, big low moving into the Bristol Bay region.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.